survivors, and welcome to Survivor's Guild, the only channel that determines your odds of surviving 2006's Open Water 2, Adrift. So stay tuned till the end for your survival stats. I'm your sharp-dressed slasher turned horror host, GhostFake. And today we are taking a look at 2006's standalone psychological thriller, Open Water 2, Adrift. But first, go ahead and take off that thumbs up button and make yourself a rope, and grab onto that subscribe button and try to climb into the boat. And go ahead and hit that share button to remind everyone to put the damn ladder down before jumping out of the boat. And go ahead and check out patreon.com/survivorsguild. For just $1 a month, you can check out some of the exclusive content for patrons only and get early access to my videos as long as I can keep that up. And go ahead and check out this video's sponsor, King Needgore.
Meet Corey G. He's 26 years old, a man of God, a man of fitness. Look at him go! And he's the most wholesome content creator on YouTube. Corey seemed to have it all figured out.
Hello all of you beautiful people out there. It's your old pal Corey here. I just got a package in the mail. Probably from one of my loving fans out there. Y'all are the best.
He made the mistake of watching a movie.
Gee willikers, it's a blank DVD case.
A movie that would change his life forever.
What the
From the creators of crippling anxiety and deafening depression, brings you a new chapter in horror YouTube content. One man, a bunch of weird horror movies just aching to be reviewed. Oh yeah. Subscribe to King Needgore.
Thanks, King Needgore, for sponsoring this video. Now I hope you like treading water for several hours on end trying to get back into the boat. And just for your information, this movie is stressful, because this movie is getting spoiled. Open Water 2, Adrift, originally titled Adrift with no relation to Open Water, was then given the title later because of the massive success of Open Water, much to this movie's detriment, I believe. It acts as a pretty decent and tense standalone thriller with absolutely none of the creature violence from the first movie, the primary threat here being drowning and idiocy. Open Water 2, Adrift was written by Adam Kreutner and Collin McMahon, and directed by Hans Horn, starring Susan Pratt, Richard Speight Jr., Eric Dane, Cameron Richardson, Hillis, and Niklaus Lange. Open Water 2 Adrift is about a group of friends who have a reunion on their friend's boat, only to end up in the water with no way of getting back on board. We open up to some old footage of the friends, couples Dan and Amy, and Lauren and Zach, before we cut to based on true events, which is thrown around very loosely in this series. And 5 years later, Amy is no longer with Dan, but is instead with James, and they have a daughter together named Sarah. They arrive at the marina just behind Zach and Lauren, and Amy throws on a life vest, having an intense fear of the water. James gets introduced to Zach, whose birthday it is, and the couples head into the marina to find their boat. They find their boat, but Dan is nowhere to be found. But they do end up finding him in the living quarters with his new girlfriend, Michelle. The group celebrates Zach's birthday, and then they set sail. And while Lauren and Zach grill Dan on how he has made his money,
I prefer to make my fortune the old-fashioned way.
How's that?
With other people's money!
Amy and James work on getting Sarah down for a nap. The group gives a toast to Zach and the good life before partying a little bit, before they decide to go swimming.
Stones.
I love her!
Amy hears Sarah crying over the monitor and goes down into the boat to get her back to sleep. And after a bit, Amy gets Sarah back to sleep and heads back up topside. Dan tries to convince Amy to get into the water and ultimately convinces her by picking her up and jumping in. And while she floats in the water in shock, we get a flashback of the time that she was swimming with her dad, and he never resurfaced, scarring Amy for life, which means that Amy's dad traumatizes his daughter all the way into the meat bank at deposit number 1. And while her friends try to comfort her, they try to get her out of the water, but they can't find a ladder. The group tries to find a way back onto the boat while James comforts Amy. They try standing on Michelle's dolphin floaty, but it pops. Dan next tries grabbing onto the flag at the back of the boat, but when he does, it rips, taking that option off the table. The group plays a round of the blame game, which really the only person to blame here is Dan, so the game doesn't go that well for him.
I didn't think. I made a mistake.
and Amy remembers that Sarah is still up in the boat, which makes this movie feel even more tense. A little later, they can hear a phone ringing and they realize that it's Zach's phone, and luckily for them, his jacket is hanging off the edge. They grab the jacket and they get the phone, but the person on the line can't hear them, and when he can't get a signal, Zach throws the phone in frustration. A little bit later, Dan has an idea, which is to turn this movie into Open Water 2 After Dark, by gathering everyone's bathing suits and making a rope. And while the group fashions a rope from their bathing suits, James asks Dan if there might be a way in the boat from the bottom, and Dan says that he doesn't know. So James gets the mask from him and then borrows the knife from Zach and dives under the boat. Meanwhile, Zach tries to climb up their homemade rope. While Zach is scaling the cloth rope, you can hear the threads tearing, and you just know something bad is going to happen. Meanwhile, James is under the boat and drops the knife. He swims down to grab it and ends up getting it before it disappears, but now he must swim back to the surface. He panics as his air runs out, and he swims directly into the tail shaft. Meanwhile, Zach falls back into the water when he loses his grip and the cloth rope rips. Two things here that could have helped. One, instead of Zach, send Lauren, who probably weighs less than Zach and could scale the rope. Two, don't be so dumb that you look for a way into the boat by looking under it. Feeling all helpless, the group tries to find another way onto the boat when Amy sees James with the new bleeding out of his ears feature and calls over Lauren to check it out, who then lets Zach know that it looks like James might have a skull fracture. Zach gets the knife from James and he begins stabbing the yacht for hurting his new acquaintance James, but also because there is a square cutout on the side of the boat and he wants to know what it is. But Dan hates human on boat violence and swims over to stop him. But in the scuffle, the boat turns the knife on Zach, stabbing him in his chest. And while the group tends to Zach, Michelle gets nervous about all the blood and swims away from them. And to make matters worse, Sarah wakes up from her nap and can be heard screaming over the monitor. Guys, this movie is just one big ball of diarrhea-inducing anxiety, and there aren't even any sharks! Amy realizes that Michelle is missing, and Dan swims over to find her. He dives down and sees her sinking to the bottom, apparently having chosen to drown rather than keep on swimming. And he can't quite make it to her, and Michelle sinks into the meat bank at deposit number 2. Cut to sometime later, Zach is not doing so hot, having been stabbed in the chest and all, and him and Lauren share memories before Zach stops breathing at deposit number 3, into our meat bank. With Michelle and Zach dead and James dying, Dan is compelled to come clean and explain that all of the success and riches that he pretended to have are not actually his, including the yacht, that belongs to his boss, which is why he felt he needed to stop Zach from stabbing it. Hours later, Lauren lets them know that she is going to try to swim for the shore, and swims off into the sunset. And since we never hear from her again, I'm counting her as a deposit, because that seems like some tragic slap in the face that this movie would do. So as far as I'm concerned, Lauren swims into the meat bank at deposit number 4. Just in time for Sarah to wake up and cry again. Ugh, that hurts my heart. Hours later, Amy mentions diving for the knife, but Dan knows that she shouldn't do it. So Dan dives looking for the knife, knowing it's a futile effort. James begins telling Amy that he is tired and is going to go to sleep. She begs him to stay awake, and James goes to sleep into the meat bank at deposit number 5. Guys, this movie makes me feel like, and I know it's only gonna get worse before it gets any better. These meat bank deposits are depressing. Holy Dan's out there looking for a knife he knows he'll never find, listening to Amy wail while holding on to her dead husband while her baby is screaming on the boat. Man, this movie is really sad. And they did a great job making it. I'm just pissed off that I have to cover it in order to get to Open Water 3, which is the fun one, damn it! Anyway, she lets James's soul sack know that her and Sarah are going to miss him a whole bunch.
Sarah and I we're gonna miss you so much.
And then lets his body drift away. Dan, angry at himself for just about everything, smashes his goggles on the side of the boat until they break. He remembers what Zach was trying to do with that side panel, and swims over with the lens of the goggles and tries to open it. He jams the lens in the opening and tells Amy to try to climb up, and after a few attempts she is able to get on board. She hits the button and the ladder extends from the boat. Amy leaves Dan to climb it himself while she goes to tend to Sarah. She comforts Sarah and gets her back to sleep while Dan decides he's gonna head out. Amy notices that Dan hasn't come in out of the rain and goes to see what's going on. She sees Dan swimming away from the boat and she throws out a life preserver before diving in to retrieve him. She swims out to save him while the film cuts between scenes of her going after Dan and her going after her father as a child, and her ultimately not being able to save him. We then cut to the next morning and this fishing boat that comes upon the yacht and notices the ladder extended and the f***ing life preserver still in the water. And he circles the yacht, hearing Sarah's cries and not seeing anyone on the boat. We then cut to see Amy standing on the deck while Sarah cries and Dan laying face down on the deck, apparently in the meat bank at deposit number 6. Amy closes her eyes and the movie ends. Wait a second, what the f***? Alright, so here's the deal. The movie's ending is a little confusing and a lot ambiguous, but I think with a critical eye, we can solve this mystery. Okay, so at the end, as this fisherman circles the yacht, there is no one on the deck and Sarah is crying. But when we flash to Amy, there is no sign of the fisherman circling the yacht, and Sarah is still crying. I believe that Amy drowned while trying to save Dan, which would explain why everything is left just as it is when Amy dove into the water, and why she is not responding to the cries of her daughter, and why the fisherman doesn't see them. And in this case, I'm going to have to count it as such and say Amy is unpeacefully resting into our meat bank at deposit number 7. And that's how the movie ends. So now, to find out, what are your chances of suffering survivor's guilt? This is where we take a look at our main characters and the death that surrounds them to determine your odds of surviving this movie. Today's stats are brought to us by King Needgore, so check out King Needgore for some excellent content. We start off our meat bank deposits with Amy's dad flashbacking into the meat bank at deposit number 1. We then get Michelle sinking into the meat bank at deposit number 2. Zach tragic dying into the meat bank at deposit number 3. Lauren never being seen again at deposit number 4. James going to sleep at deposit number 5. Dan seeing to it that all of his friends die at deposit number 6. And we wrap up our meat bank deposits with Amy trying to save a piece of at deposit number 7 into our meat bank. Now let's take a look at our survivors. We've got Sarah. Now I know what you're gonna say, what about the fisherman? But my standard is all the deaths shown and spoken, but only the main characters count when they live. If the character could be played by a cardboard cutout, I don't count them. So Sarah is the only survivor that counts, which means that out of a total of 8 characters, only 1 survives, giving you a 12.5% chance of surviving this movie. Given those odds, how many of your friends would you kill before coming clean that you lied to them a whole bunch? Let me know in the comments below. And if this is your first time on my channel, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, including Open Water 3 Cage Dive. Seriously, it's not nearly the downer this one is, I promise. Also, consider checking out patreon.com/survivorsguilt. For just $1 a month, you can get access to exclusive content and early access to my regular uploads. So if $1 falling out of your pocket over the course of a month wouldn't bother you, consider losing it our way at patreon.com/survivorsguilt. And special thanks to my patrons: Chris D, Sackhead Ed, Bubba T, Maximilian H, Macabre Python 18, Video Creep, Populio, Valentina P, Destiny T, James H, Mintrix, Brady D, Matthew, Vids for You, and Mr. Kitty. Seriously guys, thank you so much for supporting what we do here. We really appreciate it and it goes a long way. Alrighty guys, as always, thanks and don't die. By the way, special thanks to Poltergeist OD for this new background music.
I'm Poltergeist and I make inappropriate songs about horror movies.
So basically, I just came to see some naked D's and A's for free. Take a peek, take a key. 12 cabins, 12 vacancies, 12 bodies, mother pray for me. I might go psycho occasionally. One body too many, pray for me, cause we all go a little mad sometimes.
No happy ever after, just chapter after chapter after chapter. Massacre, make the Ripper look like an amateur ambassador of the slashers. Michael, Lord of the Dead, Lord of the Dead. You could wake up in the coroner's bed. This is the hour for mourning and dread. Drain all the blood that was stored in his head.
All of the apologies that you can muster from your dread won't protect you on your bed. Nothing will from Pumpkinhead.
This is not a dream, baby. This ain't Halloween, baby. When I'm on the scene, this is what we call a scream, baby.
Subscribe on YouTube at Poltergeist OD. Follow me on Instagram and the Slasher app at Poltergeist_OD.